Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we've been asked the question of what aircraft were embarked on Battleship New Jersey. We've talked a fair amount about the aircraft on the ship over the hundreds of videos on this channel. However, we've never made one video where we talked about all of the aircraft that were embarked on board, all the different types. And while I could name a bunch of them off the top of my head and what decades they were on board, I never really sat down and thought about which ones were actually embarked versus which ones were just visiting and how many total there were. And the short answer is I came up with a list of 6 aircraft. I've only been looking at this for a couple of minutes now, so we might think of others later on. We might update this video in the future. But over 5 decades of service, it seems like Battleship New Jersey only had 6 aircraft embarked. And that may be at least one more than any of the other Iowa-class battleships. When Battleship New Jersey was first deployed during World War II, she had usually 2, but no more than 3 Vault OS-2U Kingfisher floatplanes. These were the standard battleship floatplanes of World War II for the US Navy. And so it's not uncommon that New Jersey carried these aircraft. They would have been launched from catapults at the stern of the ship. By the end of the war, and possibly for a short period of time post-World War II, Battleship New Jersey traded in her Kingfishers for a pair of Curtiss SC Seahawks. These were the late war spotting plane. They had a single seat. And again, they were probably used shortly post-war. But it seems like either just before Battleship New Jersey was decommissioned or when she was decommissioned, her floatplane catapults were removed. When she was reactivated in the 1950s, without floatplane catapults, she instead carried an embarked Sikorsky helicopter, the HO-3S1, some models known as the H-5, and in some service known as the Dragonfly. This was her main aircraft throughout her entire 1950s commission. Other early helicopters landed on the ship during this time, but this was the sort that her embarked aircrew from at least 2 different squadrons over that time period would have flown. Also during this time, she carried a radioplane OQ-3 at various times. The OQ-3 was a remotely piloted vehicle that was used as an anti-aircraft training target. So you'd fly this target, and in some instances you're firing at the drone itself. In some instances the drone is firing a target sled, but the anti-aircraft guns are so effective that they might, in addition to taking out the sled, also take out the aircraft, so you don't want it to be manned aircraft. And New Jersey would have operated with these during World War II as well. We just don't have any evidence that they were embarked on board this ship. They might have been launched from different shore stations or ships operating alongside of her. That was certainly the case when Battleship New Jersey was reactivated in the 1960s. In addition to being the only time period that New Jersey didn't have an embarked Marine detachment, she also did not have embarked aircraft during that time. She was set up to be able to take control of Snoopy drones, but she didn't carry them herself. Those would be launched by the ships operating alongside of her. This was an observation version of the Dash drone. She also landed all of the standard helicopters that you can think of from the Vietnam War era. In fact, the crew stenciled New Jersey International along her helipad because she was taking so many aircraft on board. Aircraft flying in from the Philippines, flying in from South Vietnam, flying in from Japan, flying in from other ships in the fleet. She constantly had aircraft on board, but none of them were embarked. The maintenance personnel for those aircraft, the spare parts for those aircraft were on other ships or shore installations. The pilots went back to other ships to sleep most nights. She essentially just acted as a landing pad for those ships. Because the Iowa-class battleships don't have a hangar, and most other ships that are embarking aircraft during this time did, so she just didn't have one embarked. Common aircraft that would have flown onto and off of the ship during that time include the UH-1 Huey or Iroquois, the CH-46 Sea Knight, the CH-47 Chinook, the CH-53 Super Stallion, basically name a helicopter from the Vietnam War. It likely crossed decks on New Jersey at some point. During her final period of service, New Jersey briefly embarked a Cayman SH-2 Sea Sprite helicopter. This was an embarked aircraft that was part of the ship's crew. The one on New Jersey was known as the Sea Snake, and it seems to have only been on board in the 1983-1984 time period. I imagine that the difficulties with both landing on board and the maintenance to the aircraft led to them not embarking aircraft during future deployments of the Battleship, and I suspect none of the other Iowas ever had an embarked helicopter during the 1980s. Iowa might have, but certainly by the time that Missouri and Wisconsin were reactivated, they did not have helicopters permanently embarked. It doesn't mean that helicopters weren't landing on board. All the ones I previously mentioned, including Sea Sprites and UH-60 Seahawks, would have certainly landed on board during that time period, but they were not embarked members of the crew. The final type of aircraft that the Iowa-class battleships embarked was the RQ-2 Pioneer drone. This remotely piloted vehicle was tested on Iowa in 1986, and probably around 1988 or 1989, they are assigned to New Jersey, and she carries them during some of her deployments right at the end of the ship's career. These unmanned aerial vehicles, or remotely piloted vehicles as they were known at that time, were used to spot the fall of shot for the main battery guns. So while you've no doubt seen footage of all sorts of aircraft operating off of Iowa-class battleships, it seems like New Jersey would have only ever had 6 embarked throughout her entire 5 decades of career, and I suspect the other Iowas only ever had 5 types of aircraft on board. What sort of aircraft do you think was most useful to the battleships? Float planes like they had during World War II, in which case which type? Helicopters, drones? Let us know which one's your favorite, which one you think was the most useful in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about us in the channel. Thanks for watching.